Another scorcher today in the Midlands, but we could see some rain in the forecast soon. Thanks for joining me for Friends at 5. I'm Alicia Nieves. Darcy and Andrea have the day off. We're going to send things straight over to Chief Meteorologist Efren Afonte with a check of your forecast. Efren, how's it looking out there?
Well, a couple people already had some thunderstorms about.
All right, Efren, thank you very much. Today, dash cam footage was released in an officer-involved shooting where a state trooper and a suspect were shot in early June in York County. Both have been released from the hospital after suffering non-life-threatening injuries. News 19's Lauren Thomas joins us now to talk more about this video. Lauren.
Yeah, well, Trooper Paul Wise was attempting to pull over 27-year-old Willie Bernard Wright on June 2nd during a traffic stop. And during that time, Wright allegedly shot at the officer. Now, the video you're about to see has been edited. We decided to take out some of the most graphic parts of this dash cam footage, but we did not change the context of the video.
Turning right into Camp Cannon, turning right into Camp Cannon. Just hit. Chester D95, be advised I've been struck, so is he.
As you heard in that video, there were multiple shots fired. However, Trooper Wise was able to fire back at the suspect and then take the suspect into custody. Both were taken to the hospital and later released. Now, this all happened again after Trooper Wise was attempting a traffic stop in York County after William Bernard Wright was seen driving without a seatbelt. When Wright stopped at a dead end, that's when he allegedly got out of the car and fired at Trooper Wise. Wright is facing multiple charges in York County, including attempted murder, possession of a weapon during a violent crime, possession of a weapon by a convicted felon, and failure to stop for blue lights. He's also facing a federal charge of possession of a weapon by a convicted felon. He's currently being held in federal custody. During the time of the incident, Wise was on probation for a 2013 attempted murder conviction. Now, Wise is facing 10 years in federal prison if convicted, and Wright is facing a maximum sentence of 10 years in federal prison if convicted. But Trooper Wise, he was wearing body armor during the time of the shooting and credits that to saving his life.
All right, Lauren, thank you very much. Concord police continue to investigate the shooting of a former USC quarterback. It happened Monday afternoon during an argument in North Carolina. Police say Anthony Wright was dropping off his child when he got in an argument with the mother's boyfriend. Wright was shot multiple times and airlifted to a local hospital. Concord police say Wright is in stable condition tonight. A married couple found dead in a burning mobile home has been identified. The Clarendon County coroner says the bodies were found in Waibu Saturday morning. They were 67-year-old John Blanton and 59-year-old Mary Lynn Blanton. Autopsies are still pending tonight. Police in Maine say a missing teenager could be in South Carolina. 15-year-old Kayla Skula was last seen March 22nd leaving Saco, Maine in an unknown vehicle. She's described as being 5 feet 5 inches tall with blonde hair and blue eyes. In addition to ties in Maine, she has connections to Berkeley County. Anyone who has seen Skula or may know where she is asked to call Crime Stoppers 1-888-CRIME-SC. Social media is buzzing with concerns about car break-ins in Columbia. Tonight we're on your side with answers on what police are doing and how you can keep your property safe. News 19's Kaylin Hagwood has that story.
Police tell me it's not odd to see an uptick in things like burglaries and car break-ins in the summertime. Because of this, they've come up with different strategies to curb the problem and say you can help make a difference.
Officers are really out on the lookout for people in neighborhoods where it's darkened areas. We're out checking. We're also on bikes.
If you have any suspicious video on your home cameras, you can share that with authorities. Also, just being a watchful neighbor can be helpful. And remembering to lock your doors. In many of these incidents, police say the cars have been unlocked and the suspects appear to be individuals under the age of 18. They've made several arrests but are still working to stop the issue.
We're asking our neighbors to really help us in this by way of seeing if someone is walking through the neighborhood late at night, pulling on door handles. Calling the police when you think that there may be something going on, you're not sure, call us anyway. Let the officer be able to determine whether there's crime afoot.
Police say they do recover a lot of property that's stolen, so it's important that you know the serial number and other relevant information on your items so that they can be retrieved later. Reporting in the studio, Kaylin Hagwood, News 19, WLTX.
Kaylin, thank you. And if you see something suspicious happening in your neighborhood, you can call Crime Stoppers. That number, as always, 1-888-CRIME-SC. More than 2 years after going into effect, we're taking a closer look at South Carolina's gas tax and where your money is going. According to the South Carolina Department of Transportation, the tax brought in nearly $200 million alone since passing in July 2017. The current state tax on gasoline is 22 cents. SCDOT says 15 projects across 4 roads in Richland County are complete thanks to the tax. All of those projects were pavement improvements and cost roughly $2.6 million. DOT spokesman Pete Poore says if you're not seeing action in your county yet, please be patient.
We would appreciate the public's patience. As I've said before, it doesn't happen overnight. We welcome them to look at the website, see what projects are scheduled for your county if you're interested. There are many ways to check the progress of the projects online, but if you don't see any activity soon, you will.
According to the state, more than 350 paving and safety improvements were implemented across South Carolina. The tax will continue to increase for the next 3 years. A man in Orangeburg won $100,000 playing Powerball after buying a ticket with spare change. The winner said he bought the ticket with the change from filling up his car and usually only pays when the jackpot gets high. He bought the ticket from the end market on Nice's Highway. He was only one number away from actually winning the jackpot. Coming up next on Friends at 5, we will have much more news for you, including your forecast. That's coming up in just a couple of minutes. Specialty foods with a social conscience are really trending, especially at the Fancy Food Show in New York. As Hillary Lane explains, many of these products are big on flavor and they're making an impact around the world.
Decadent chocolate, award-winning olive oil, and West African grain. Delicious foods with a social conscience. At the 2019 Fancy Food Show in New York, companies with a mission to give back are trending.
We build bridges between divided communities.
Hadass Lahav's company, Sindiana of Galilee, partners Arabs and Israelis to produce olive oil and other products. From job opportunities for Arab women and work with Arab farmers, to the bottle artwork created by Arab and Israeli children. They want to be an example of how Arab and Jewish people can live in peace.
We think this is better for the future of our children, and this will be better for both sides.
Specialty foods is a $150 billion industry, largely driven by millennials.
They're not particularly
Denise Purcell of the Specialty Food Association says young people want the companies they buy from to share their values.
They're becoming more interested in what the company is about, not just how the product is made, but the people behind it and what they stand for.
Our purpose is to increase per capita income in rural West Africa.
Philip Tevereau partnered with Chef Pierre Cham to found Yolele, a company that sells fonio, an ancient grain grown by small farmers in West Africa. The company is creating jobs in the region and introducing more consumers to fonio.
People are ready for the new tastes, and they haven't experienced West African food by and large.
And they're eager to try new products that are trying to make the world a better place. Hillary Lane, CBS News, New York.
Other mission-driven companies include a falafel company employing Syrian refugees and another working to combat food waste by upcycling and using the waste from one product to make another. Big news from Krispy Kreme. They're launching a donut delivery service. The service is now available at 100 participating stores in 15 states, including South Carolina. The stores in the Midlands can be found in Casey, Columbia, and Lexington. Other stores around the state participating are in Aiken, Greenville, Indian Land, and Rock Hill. Krispy Kreme is working to make the service available nationwide by the end of this year. Coming up next on Friends at 5, our Street Squad is talking boat safety. Plus, closer look at your Midlands forecast. That's next. Preparations are underway for the July 4th celebration in the nation's capital. It will feature military bands, a military flyover, and fireworks, as well as a presidential address. But as Nicole Killian reports, critics say the president is politicizing a non-political holiday.
The Finishing touches are being put in place along the National Mall for President Trump's salute to America. He tweeted, "The Pentagon and our great military leaders are thrilled to be doing this and showing to the American people, among other things, the strongest and most advanced military anywhere in the world, incredible flyovers, and biggest ever fireworks."
It'll be special, and I hope a lot of people come.
But the Independence Day celebration is already sparking fireworks in the nation's capital.
He's politicized the 4th of July before he opens his mouth.
D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton raised concerns about the display of military tanks on the National Mall. Those tanks arrived at a D.C. rail yard Tuesday and will be transported through the city on trucks.
I don't think it helps to have heavy equipment on the mall. Even if it were on flatbed trucks, because it's weight.
Some are also criticizing the plan, which includes a ticketed VIP section here at the Lincoln Memorial where President Trump will speak. But the White House insists the event will be open to the public and his message will be unifying.
Thematically, how wonderful this country is, our troops and military, our great democracy, and great call to patriotism.
The National Park Service tells CBS News it expects hundreds of thousands of visitors.
Certainly going to be more expensive than previous years. Anytime you get a presidential visit, there are inherent security costs.
The full costs of the festivities won't be known until after it's all over. Nicole Killian, CBS News, Washington.
Protesters are also expected to descend on the nation's capital during the Salute to America event, which begins tonight at 6:30. Local and federal law enforcement officials say they will be staffed to handle the president's address, protests, as well as the other local July 4th events. And many of you will be enjoying lots of food this 4th of July, but experts say you may get sick if you don't properly store that food. Emily Correll has the details.
On the 4th of July, I like to eat barbecue chicken, macaroni, collard greens, some dirty rice.
I really love hot dogs with some relish and cheese, and I am good to go. And it has to be burnt.
Normally get on some burgers and some hot dogs, probably some barbecue, a little ice cream. Always good on the 4th of July.
According to studies, Americans will down 155 million hot dogs on this 4th of July weekend. This day is one of the biggest days of the year for cookouts, barbecues, whatever you might call it. With all this food consumption, it is also important to still think about our health.
The temperatures get hotter, and if we don't store our food properly, we can have bacterial growth, and that can lead to illness when people eat the food.
Dr. Michaels works in the Palmetto Poison Center out of the USC School of Pharmacy. She fields calls all day from medication errors to snake bites from all over the state. Today, she talked to us about food poisoning precautions.
We cook something and we're all grazing, especially summertime, there's a party, but there's a limit to how long we can keep our food out. And for food, we want it out on the counter in the house no more than 2 hours. And if we're outside, if it's above 90 degrees, only 1 hour before it goes back in the refrigerator.
Dr. Michaels says some cases of food poisoning may need medical attention, but if you do get it, make sure to stay hydrated. If symptoms last longer than 48 hours, it's probably time to see your doctor. Here are 5 quick tips from Dr. Michaels to stay food safe this holiday weekend.
Make sure you use a meat thermometer when you're cooking meat to make sure it's the proper temperature. Keep it as cold as possible. Keep your raw meat separate from your other prepared food. Put ice underneath it to keep it cold and keep a timer going. Check that time. If it's more than 2 hours, 1 hour is above 90 degrees, then put it back in the cooler, back in the fridge so it stays safe for you to eat.
I'm Emily Correll, News 19 WLTX.
Emily, thank you. With the upcoming holiday, law enforcement officials say we are sure to see more boaters out on the water. But Lexington County deputies want to make sure everyone knows a few safety tips first. That's why they're reminding boaters to have a life jacket for everyone aboard. Create a float plan that lists where you'll be out on the water, how long you're going to be there, and docking locations. Officials also say to never get on a boat if you're under the influence.
For this past Saturday with fireworks, we had 5 boats for Lexington DNR and 5 boats for Lexington County Sheriff's Department out here. During this week, we're keeping a minimum of 2 boats out here for Lexington County, and we will also have an increased patrol this weekend with both DNR and Lexington County Sheriff's Department on the lake.
Officials say EMS will also be out on the water over the weekends during the summer months. Time now to send things over to meteorologists Efren Afante and meteorologist Daniel Bonds for a look at our forecast. And guys, it should be mandatory to be out on the water on days like today.
It should be, but we're going to take a quick look at what you can expect for your July the 4th holiday out on Lake Murray and our area lakes as well. We're talking about temperatures in the mid to upper 90s, but there will be that opportunity for some showers and storms across our area lakes. We've had a few showers and storms develop this afternoon. This is our high resolution visible satellite, and you notice some activity moving across portions of the Midlands.
And considering the fact that a lot of people, especially in the city of Orangeburg, well, this is between 3 and 4 o'clock, a storm developed in southern Lexington County, rushed to the southeast right over the city of Orangeburg, but the activity has since dwelled down. But we've been watching these outflow boundaries now pushing into Aiken, into the northwestern portions of the Midlands, now moving into upper Richland County, even down along southern Orangeburg County. This is where we see outflow boundaries start to bounce together, where they create more thunderstorms. Now, the one big pronounced one, this outflow boundary that's been moving through the low country, this is moving west. Anything that develops will stay in the low country. So at least for now, we're not doing too bad, but it's been hot.
Another story right there. It's hot, it's humid, and obviously if you've been outside, you notice that. Temperatures right all across the Midlands, generally in the mid to upper 90s or so, with the exception of Orangeburg and Aiken. You guys checking in the upper 80s, but you mix in the humidity, it feels even hotter. It feels like 99 in the capital city. Check out Lexington, 103 right now. So if you're doing anything outdoors, you definitely want to be careful, and that's the case tomorrow as well. We do have this air quality warning that's beginning Wednesday morning, or at about 10 o'clock or so until 8 o'clock. So if you have lung disease, if you're an older person or young children, definitely need to be careful tomorrow as this air quality warning is in effect for the Midlands.
And keep in mind that it's been so hot, and every time it rains, I joked about this yesterday, it rains 20 minutes and then all of a sudden everything feels like a sauna. Well, the setup we have hasn't really changed as much. High pressure is the controlling feature all throughout the southeast, but with high pressure down in the Gulf just pushing all this moisture out of the Gulf into the Carolinas, well, get ready because we've had very little chance of rain. In fact, our computer model shows any rain that we have for this evening will be gone. Tomorrow morning, it'll be partly cloudy. Now, we do expect some convection across the shoreline. That may push into parts of the Midlands, but it'll be short-lived. And then by the time we get it to Wednesday night, it'll finally be done and gone.
So here's what we're expecting for tonight. Maybe a shower, especially in the southern half of the Midlands. Most of it's going to stay dry, pretty warm, with low temperatures dropping into the mid to low 70s. Another hot one tomorrow with highs topping off in the mid to upper 90s. Can't rule out a small chance for a shower or thunderstorm on Wednesday. July the 4th, it's going to be hot, humid. Heat index values right around 104, but you notice each and every day there will be at least a small opportunity for some showers and storms. And Efren, this is your typical South Carolina July pattern.
No doubt. And one thing, Alicia, have fun, be prepared with the weather, but if you're going to spend outside, water and a lot of shade.
Most definitely. I remember you guys telling us yesterday that it felt like 108 degrees in Hilton Head. Yikes. So, all right. Thank you very much. Hey, speaking of the heat, Serve and Connect, they're making special boxes for law enforcement to give out to the public. Check it out.
These are the building blocks that help get us to a deeper level of relationship building. We have requests available for our Cool the Summer campaign. Comes with things to help people cool. 2 bottles of water and a cooling towel, and what we hope is that it's just an opportunity for police when they see someone who may be really hot during these summer months. They can hand it to them and help keep them cool and open the door for a positive relationship. Create a foundation of trust, which is part of our model for our deeper efforts to build and rebuild a community safety infrastructure. Consistently reaching out to help people in need by being present for them, it helps to build that process of trust, which is so critical, especially in communities where that trust is so fragmented or even non-existent. Too often, people only see police when something bad is happening. That's hard for the officer and it's hard for the community. And so the Compassionate Acts program helps create more positive moments of kindness.
Coming up in the second half hour of Friends at 5, it's the anniversary of the crash of U.S. Air Flight 1016. 25 years ago today, the flight from Columbia to Charlotte crashed in a field by the Charlotte Douglas Airport. A survivor shares his story next.
It seemed like forever. I could remember saying, oh gosh, I'm in hell. I mean, this is just the smoke and the flame. It was hot.
I heard someone yell out, everybody out, I think it's gonna blow.
They said we were going over 300 miles per hour. When the plane crashed, it was surreal. There was fire and debris. I saw people torn apart. It's like a war.
Welcome to the second half hour of Friends at 5. I'm Alicia Nieves. Today marks a somber anniversary. It's been 25 years since the crash of U.S. Air Flight 1016. 37 people died on July 2nd, 1994, after the DC-9 commercial flight from Columbia crashed into a field in a home near the Charlotte Douglas Airport, the plane breaking into 3 pieces. 20 people miraculously survived the crash. Today we're hearing stories of survivors that hail from the Midlands. 25 years later, they're looking back on that fateful day.
Hello, I'm Jason Sturkey and I'm a survivor of U.S. Air Flight 1016.
In 1994, the Saturday before the July 4th holiday was a sunny day in Columbia. Lots of hustle and bustle at the airports. Families taking trips for the long weekend.
At the last minute, I decided to go. And then somehow my nephew Christopher got on board as well.
Jason Sturkey, a soon-to-be junior at the University of South Carolina, had a seat booked on U.S. Air Flight 1016, a 33-minute flight from Columbia to Charlotte. With him was his mother, Sue, and his nephew Christopher, ready for a 4th of July family gathering in Memphis.
Every year or two, one group would make the trip either direction. Either someone would come from Tennessee or someone would go from South Carolina to go visit some of my mom's family in Tennessee.
It was an evening flight, taking off from Columbia shortly after 6 o'clock. As passengers boarded the plane, some who were seated in the rear asked to move to the middle, including Sturkey's family.
I remember we were right around the wing area. My mom was on the aisle seat, I was in the middle, and then my nephew Christopher was to the right in the window seat.
So far, the flight was normal. At cruising altitude, Sturkey remembers clear blue skies. But soon, the sky was replaced with darkness.
It was almost pitch black dark. We had flown into the middle of a very dark gray, almost black thundercloud. The first thing I noticed that gave me an indication something might be wrong was I could tell that the plane dipped. You know, I equate it to being on a roller coaster.
The pilots were flying into a thunderstorm.
Wind chill alert, northeast boundary wind 190 at 13. 1016 is on the go. This is 1016, understand you're on the go so far, runway head and climb and maintain 3000. Up to 3, we're taking a right turn now. This is 1016, understand you're turning right. This is 1016, when you have time, tell me you're heading. This is 1016, Charlotte Tower.
At 6:43, the plane made impact.
I remember starting to think, you know, what's going on, but before I could process anything, there was one heavy jolt that threw me forward and backwards. And then within another split second, there was a much larger, extreme, you know, most violent jolt that you can imagine that threw me forward again. You know, I now know that's when the plane had struck the ground. It was not a nosedive, it was a belly flop. I didn't hear anyone scream, oh no, we're going to crash. I could hear the engines revving up right after the drop and right before the first jolt. The engine started winding up.
The National Transportation Safety Board said a strong downward wind called a microburst slammed the DC-9 jet into the ground just west of the runway at Charlotte Douglas. The plane bounced, skidded into trees, then split into 3 parts.
And that second jolt, it kind of just launched me, kind of like being shot out of a cannon, because I couldn't see, hear. Well, I mean, I could see and hear. If I could open my eyes, I could hear a lot. The sound was horrific. It was just a lot of crunching, crashing sounds, as you can imagine. When all of the chaos came to a stop, I was lying flat on my back, so I'm surmising that that second jolt threw me from my seat. Even though I was buckled in, my pelvis was fractured on the left side right where the buckle was, and I had a square indention in my pelvis. I initially thought we had exploded in midair and I was just flying through the air, unable to open my eyes. But then after about 10 seconds, I'd say between 5 and 10 seconds of that feeling, everything came to a stop and I opened my eyes and I realized we were on the ground.
Part of the jet landed on a house. The homeowners were on a rare trip out of town. Sturkey laid trapped in debris.
Where I was located was inside the rear of the fuselage, near the tail section that had crashed into the house. And what I saw was the overhead of the airplane and where it met the structure of the house. My right arm was outstretched behind me and to the right, and I was lying flat on my back and I couldn't even see my hand. My arm just disappeared in a pile of debris, and I couldn't pull it down because there was debris underneath my right elbow. And my left arm was sandwiched right here to my chest. I couldn't hardly breathe. I mean, I now know I had collapsed lungs, and that was why I couldn't breathe. I remember the smell of jet fuel. I was soaked in jet fuel. I remember the sound of the engines in the back. At least one of them, very close to me, was still going. I could feel intense heat coming from that direction, and I could hear fire crackling.
Moments later, a policeman arrived.
I wasn't sure if he had located me or not, but all I heard was the words, "Is there anybody in there?" And since I couldn't speak, with collapsed lungs, you can't talk. But I could groan and moan. As soon as I did that, he said the words, "I think I hear you in there, I'm going to get help." He was there before any fire departments were there. He actually drove up on the scene first. He was just driving down the road and happened upon it. And he's the one who told me when he first called it in, they didn't believe him. He had to get pretty emphatic with them that it was what he was saying it was. They thought it was a joke at first.
As the skies cleared, emergency crews surrounded the scene, pulling any survivors from the fiery wreckage. Other passengers in the section of the jet that landed on the house were able to run from the site. Sue and 5-year-old Christopher did not survive.
Within those first couple of minutes, when I was processing what had just happened, I knew in my spirit that if what happened to me had just happened to them, they did not survive.
Sturkey recalls being the last pulled to safety, thanks to the persistence of 2 Charlotte firefighters.
The first firefighter, I could hear them and they could talk to me, but I couldn't see them because there was a wall of debris between them and I. On 2 different occasions, I heard someone who seemed to be in authority yell out, "Everybody out, I think it's gonna blow." And the first time it happened, all I heard was the pitter-patter of feet running away, and everything just became deathly silent. When they returned after that first time, I don't know who he was, but one of the firefighters said to me, because I couldn't see his face, I could just hear him through the debris. He told me, he called me by name, and he said, "Jason," he said, "I'm not gonna leave you ever again until you're out of here." He said, "I'm not leaving until you're out." Being soaked in jet fuel, I thought it was gonna explode at any minute. But luckily, by the grace of God, it did not.
After firefighters worked to free Sturkey from the debris, he was airlifted to the hospital. As soon as he hit the operating table, he says, he went into cardiac arrest.
I credit being here today to those firefighters who worked tirelessly to get me there when they did, because even 30 seconds later, if that had happened and I had not been on the operating table, they wouldn't have had the tools to revive me. And I give God all the glory for that, because that was divine timing.
He would be on life support for 3 days.
My brother and my dad were in the trauma unit to see me sometime around 1:30 a.m. And I remember opening my eyes and seeing them, and just the look on their faces, I knew that my mom and Christopher did not survive. My family apparently stayed in their seats. And if I had not became separated from my seat, I would have most likely suffered the same fate. As we were cruising at altitude, before we knew anything was wrong, we were just up above the clouds. Christopher, at 5 years old, we were up above the clouds looking down at a layer of clouds. And he looked over at me and said, "Uncle Jason," he said, "Isn't this where Jesus lives?" Meaning up above, because you always say he lives in the clouds in heaven. And I said, "Yes, Christopher, this is where Jesus lives." And the next words out of his mouth were, "Why can't I see Jesus?"
Sturkey made a full recovery.
25 years.
In the years following the crash, he visited the firefighters who helped save his life. but says none of them took credit for never leaving his side.
5 years. And
he also met with survivors for a few years.
something on this magnitude, it's always on your mind. You never forget it. It doesn't mean you live trapped by it. It doesn't enslave you, but it is always there. It's the default setting in my brain. Whenever my mind goes idle, whenever I'm switching gears from one thing to the next, that is where it goes. It goes to the actual crash. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not consumed by it. I don't let it dictate my life.
These past 25 years have become a new normal for Sturkey and his family. He is one of 20 to survive. 37 died in the crash.
There's so many awesome people that would be impacting the Midlands in a great way if they had not been lost that day. If anything going forward, I would like that to be what people remember is the people who lost loved ones.
A federal investigation blamed the crash on several factors, including the lack of radar to alert the flight crew that they were entering what they later learned was a microburst complete with a lot of rain and wind. The plane crash happened after officials say the crew executed a missed landing in the middle of the storm. In the years after, a federal jury found the U.S. Air crew negligent. The company reportedly settled with families. The federal government also mandated traffic control towers be equipped with the latest Doppler radar weather technology. So to learn more about this weather technology, I want to bring in our weather expert, Chief Meteorologist Efren Afonte. And Efren, tell us, how crucial is this technology? Because we use similar technology here at News 19 to help people prepare.
We do, and keep in mind that in 1994, the radars that were used back then was called single polometric. Basically, all a radar does is send out a microwave radio signal, and it pings back of whatever it hits. Similar to the radars that we have. In fact, if you look at what our radar does, our radar, the installation at the airport, sends out a signal. When that signal goes out, it actually will ping against something similar to the storms we had at about 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon in Orangeburg County. We also take a look at another thing, which is the velocity, the wind speeds at particular distances and heights from the radar installation itself. We can tell how fast the winds are going and what direction they're going. And in the event that these storms are strong to severe, we can switch it over to something called storm relative velocity, in which we now account for the speed of the storm, of the thunderstorm and the storm cell, as well as the winds that are impacting along with it. Now, one big thing that we also get out of it is something called echo tops. Echo tops tells us how tall or short the height of this storm is. The brighter the colors, the higher it is, where we can have thunderstorms as high as 50,000 feet. And a microburst is simply this. A microburst is a pack of air from a decaying thunderstorm that runs straight down from the air and hits down to the ground. The technology in 1994 to now is significantly different. In fact, not only, Alicia, are now dealing with single polometric, but we now have dual polometric, in which we could take a three-dimensional slice from the radar of the atmosphere. And not only does the National Weather Service have that, and every installation throughout the United States, they now have this radar technology in commercial airlines.
That's awesome to hear. Efren, thank you for helping us learn a little bit more about that. Coming up tonight on News 19 at 11, we hear from another survivor, a witness in the trial who lost his wife on U.S. Air Flight 1016.
In a coma for 8 days, and when I woke up, the first thing I heard was, this kind of is the hard part. We buried your wife. We buried your wife yesterday.
The story of Mr. Paul Calvo coming up tonight on News 19 at 11. Stay with us, more Friends at 5 after this. If you attended a Fireflies game at Segra Park over the weekend, you may have noticed 3 new additions to the ballpark's center field wall honoring a legacy. News 19's Chandler Mack has the details tonight.
Larry Doby, Frank Robson, Jackie Robson. it's pretty hard to write the history of baseball without mentioning these three men. Now, we all know about Jackie Robinson. He was the first African American to play Major League Baseball, but few of us know about Larry Doby, a Camden, South Carolina native who was the first African American to play in the American League, or even Frank Robinson, who after playing 20 Hall of Fame years in the majors, became the first African American manager in Major League Baseball history. And on Saturday, Columbia Fireflies president John Katz and his team decided to honor these three iconic athletes.
We have formally retired numbers of some great African American ball players, really trailblazers in the game. We're looking for ways to enhance the ballpark, to enhance the experience, and really, continue to show our commitment to this community. We thought it was important to formally recognize these three individuals in particular and put their numbers up on the wall, take their numbers out of circulation, and make sure that their honor and their legacy is continued here at Segra Park. It's just a reminder. It's important for people to know the history of the people that blazed a trail, people that put their necks out on the line to give an improved opportunity for younger generations. And that's what Jackie Robinson did, that's what Larry Doby did, and of course that's what Frank Robinson did in the major leagues as a manager.
And the team says they will continue to honor the contributions of these three men and other African American players next season. Reporting in the studio, Chandler Mack, News 19, WLTX.
All right, Chandler, thank you very much. Time now to check in with meteorologist Daniel Bonds for a look at your Midlands forecast. Daniel.
Yeah, and if you're going to the ball game tonight as the Fireflies take on the Greenville Drive, it's going to be hot. Temperatures generally in the low 90s.
Another Midlands restaurant has possibly exposed their customers to hepatitis A. According to DHEC, this time it's the Huddle House restaurant on West DeKalb Street in Kershaw County. If you dined at that Huddle House between June 14th through June 28th, you may have been exposed to the hepatitis A virus. So what are some symptoms of hepatitis A? To start, people will start to feel sick anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks after contracting the disease. Some common symptoms include fever, fatigue, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, body pains, and yellowing of the eyes and skin. Most people feel sick for several weeks, but usually recover completely. DHEC says the best way to protect yourself from contracting hepatitis A is to wash your hands after using the restroom, before eating, and before preparing meals. Stay with us, more Friends at 5 after this.